Welcome back to our video series on XYZ Mesh. I'm Kyle, the creator of XYZ Mesh, and today I will be showing you the options for exporting your data. If you'd like to follow along with this video, you can obtain your very own copy of XYZ Mesh in the description down below. Every new install comes with a 5-day full functional evaluation time period, so you can determine if the product is right for you. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be assuming that you have followed along with all the other videos up to this point and you are caught up to where we're currently at. To export your data to a CSV, go to File, Export to CSV. Depending on if you interpolated your data or converted your data with Mesh, you will either be picking to export the input data or the converted data. In the same way you exported to CSV, you can choose to copy your input or converted data into your clipboard. Inside the main menu, go to Edit and choose which of the settings you'd like to copy. If you want to copy your converted data, but you want to keep it in an XYZ format, you can use the button underneath the converted data, Copy to XYZ. When exporting to DXF format, you have three options with either the input or the converted data. Inside of the XYZ Mesh main menu, go to File, and then select Export to DXF in either one of your dataset series. From here, you can see points, lines, or points and lines. Points will export your data as a series of points, and lines as a series of lines. If you choose points and lines, then you will have a layer of points as well as a layer of lines. As we covered before, Excel and XYZ Mesh has different options for data based on how the items were converted. With interpolation and standard input data, XYZ Mesh can create 3D lines or 3D scatter plots with Excel. If you converted to a mesh, a surface, wireframe, or heat graph can be created. Either way, the steps are the same. Once your data is converted into the desired format, click the Export to Excel button. A new window will appear with branding options for business and corporate tier products. For regular users or personal license tiers, these options will be grayed out. If you would like this information to be exported, fill in the information and check mark that you would like to include these brandings. The information entered will automatically be saved and will repopulate the next time the window is brought up. For mesh exports, there are a couple unique options aside from the graphing types. Major units is the ability to set intervals of the units used inside of Excel when graphing your surface. Typically, this is used to adjust scaling, but it's easier to manipulate this inside of Excel after exporting, as you can visibly see the changes when you make them. Include graph transparencies removes the background of the graph so the plot can be overlaid on top of an image or another plot. XYZ Mesh comes with the option for users to browse for an image to use as the background of their plot. Typically, this is done with Google Earth screenshots, but pictures of other things can also be used as well. It should be noted that when you do overlay a chart over top of an image, for instance, like from Google Earth screenshot, it will take some manual adjustment to make sure that the plots line up perfectly. For 3D lines and scatter plots, the user has a unique option to lock boundaries. Locking boundaries allowed for the 3D scatter plots to be zoomed in. However, not all sets of data are compatible with this feature, like latitude and longitude, as the variation from X and Y values are too great for a zoom property to work inside of Excel. For this reason, we leave the option turned off by default. When ready, select your option for export and click Export to Excel. After a little bit of time, a new Excel document will open with your exported data, branding, and your graph created. XYZ Mesh project files are unique file formats that can be opened inside of XYZ Mesh. The project file contains input data and converted data with a few settings unique to each project. To save a project file, go to XYZ Mesh's main menu, select File, and Save As. With business and corporate tier licensed products, encrypted project files are added as a way to lock projects to a specific company. With the encrypted project file, only users within your company with the company activation license can open and view the project. Project files can also be used to compare two plots together with the compare window, something that we'll cover in another video. New to version 10 is the ability to export an interactive 3D rendering of your surface. To export into an interactive 3D surface, you first need to have your data either interpolated or converted to a mesh. Once the conversion is done, click 3D Render Export. The first group of settings we're going to look at is how the user interacts with the plot itself. Gravity can be enabled or disabled depending on what you would like the viewer to do, such as if you'd like to imitate falling or jumping, you can turn gravity on. Collision will make the surface a solid object so as to not allow the viewer to pass through it. Surface makes a surface appear. It should be noted that collision will only be functional if the surface is enabled. Points will show the individual points of the XYZ values themselves, and they will be displayed as spheres in your 3D rendering. Color will allow the points to be specifically colored to the exact same color as the plot inside of XYZ Mesh, so you can better understand what point lines up with what section. The Z-height scale is a pass-through from the auto scale function inside of the main plot. However, sometimes the scale on 3D rendering can be a bit off. You can use this scale to either increase or decrease the Z-height as needed. Below the scaling is a drop-down menu for the main texture of the surface. Changing this selection will update the main graph on the right. This surface texture will be overlaid for the surface once it is exported. The next set of inputs are where you can really start customizing your surface. XYZ Mesh's interactive 3D render software allows the user to input a total of 3 different textures for paths and up to 10 different item models. These textures are on layers 1 through 3, and the models are on layers 4 through 13. Now, the first thing you may notice when looking down here is that you can change the object layer. And if you do that, you will notice that the object over on the right is updated as well. Now, if we go to layer 3, you're going to see that it still has textures, but as soon as we move to layer 4, you're going to see an object. That is because, like I mentioned, from layer 4 to 13 is objects that you can place, while 1 through 3 are textures for paths. So I'm going to go ahead and select layer 1. You will also notice that right here, the layer name says Path 01. You can customize this to any name that you want, and when you do, it will also update the path name that you chose over on the right. So if we want to name this green, it'll help us because we're going to now change this to a green metal rust color. So whenever we put this down, it's going to appear as a green texture. And I'm going to change the main background texture so we can see this a little bit better. So now that we have our layer selected, as well as a custom name for the layer, how do we use this as a path? Or how do we draw the path on there? If you take your mouse over the graph on the right, you can see that your mouse coordinates now change to reflect the X and Y values that is currently over. If you click and drag while you have your layer selected, you'll be able to make a path going wherever you would like on this chart. I am clicking and holding and dragging to place the points. Whenever your point falls inside of one of the squares in the mesh, it will change that texture, or it will put a new texture over top of that square in the color or the texture path that you have chosen. So it makes a path going from here all the way down. Now, before we get any further into this, I'm going to go ahead and click preview so we can see what it looks like. I'm also going to turn off gravity so we can be floating. So I'm going to go ahead and hit preview. It's going to load up. And as you can see, we now have a path going from one side all the way down to the other. You also may notice that there are a few areas like this right here that have little squares. To fix this, you can adjust the asset tolerance right here to make it go a little bit higher up. When you do that, it will bring all the textures up just a little bit to better fill in those gaps. You also may notice that whenever we clicked and dragged points, it was added to this little spreadsheet down here. This spreadsheet will tell you the layer name, and the asset associated with it. Now, the reason why this is important is if you change this asset without changing the layer number, it will change it for all the objects and points on that layer. And this is not just the thing with paths, this is also the same thing with models and assets that way too. So if we go to preview, we are now no longer going to have a green path, we're going to have a path that has muddy leaves on it. So why is that important? Well, if we change down here to layer 4, which is our first object with models in it, we can change this to trees, and we can select one of the many trees that we have available. So let's go down and select this tree. And I'm just going to place a tree here, there, and I'm going to make a smiley face going around like that. So now we have a string of trees and a smiley face. Let's go ahead and hit preview. And as you can see, we now have a set of trees with a smiley face. Now, the reason why I told you that it's important to remember your layers and your layer names is because it's very easy to get carried away and just say, okay, I already placed that tree. Now I need this tree down, and I'm going to draw some of these trees over here in a frowny face. And if you do that without changing the layer, you are also going to be updating your original trees as well. So it's important that you remember what layer you're on and make sure to keep that layer the same. So what happens whenever you add layers or you add points on there that you really don't need anymore, you don't want? Well, if you know where the points are, for instance, we know that these points right here, you can see that they are selected whenever we select these. I can go up here and say, okay, I know that it is all these points. I can select all them. As you can see, they're selected, and I can just delete with my keyboard, and now they're all gone. Now, you may have noticed that just clicking and dragging is quite tedious, and if you wanted to fill in a large area, it could be very time consuming. So let's say that you want to add in these rocks and you're just placing rocks here and there. If you just want a random assortment of rocks, that is where jitter placement comes in. You can turn this on and you can use this little slider to increase the range, and what that is going to do, it is going to randomly place a bunch of rocks in that area or whatever item you have selected. That way when you drag and drop, you can see all those rocks were added in. If you increase the jitter up, you can see that now it's going to place it in a much wider field, and I'm just clicking and dragging. So now that we have the model created, let's explain how to maneuver around your created scene. If you go to preview, you can bring up a preview image of your rendered environment, and I'm going to teach you how to operate this window. As you can see over on the left hand side, there are instructions on different things that you can do. Move, WASD, which is the standard movement control for any video game that's on a computer. W will move you forward, A will move you backward, S to the left, and D to the right. If you hold shift while you are moving, it will move you faster, kind of like a run button would do. To move your camera around, it doesn't matter if you right click or left click, but just click on the screen and drag your mouse, and that will allow you to move your camera in any direction. If you'd like to go up or down, so vertical, you can either do E to go up or Q to go down. A setting that is available for you to toggle on and off at any point is the gravity and collision. To turn gravity on, simply click G. And when you click G, you'll notice that you fall down to your surface. While walking around, if you go over an incline that you cannot quite get up, you can click spacebar to jump. And if at any time you feel like that you would like to go faster or slower, the mouse wheel, whenever you increase it, as you can see right here, when you roll the mouse wheel up, it will increase your speed. When you lower the mouse wheel down, it will decrease your speed. Another toggled on option is the collision. So collision is C, and I'm going to show you this because if for whatever reason your character passes through the floor or goes so far beyond the surface, it will automatically respawn above the surface and fall back through again, as you can see right there. So to stop this from going on infinitely and just continually building up speed till you hit terminal velocity, just hit C and you'll land right back on the surface again. But how does this benefit your customers? Well, if you go to Export 3D Viewer, you're going to have an option to export your exact interactive 3D model into a project that you can then share with your customer or whoever is going to be viewing it. And all you have to do, export 3D viewer and then give it a name. So sample name, it's creating it, and now it populated it right here. And there's your project called sample name. Here's all the assets that go along with your file. And if we run this, you're going to see that that is your project file. This folder right here is contained wherever you saved it at, which is right here. And it's not going to be small enough to email, but it is possible for you to upload this to, say, your Google Drive or something like that, or a file upload server, and then you can share it that way with whoever you would like. There are no extra software requirements for this product to run. Basically, if it will run on your machine, it will run on the person who is receiving it. However, you cannot just take this and put it somewhere else. It has to have the assets folder in the same directory as your export. And that's going to be it for our video today. Thank you all so much for making it this point in the video. If you are here, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, we're going to be uploading more videos on our tutorials with XYZ Mesh. This is not the final one. However, the next one we're going to be going into some more customizable settings, probably the graph settings. I don't really know for sure yet, but we will be going over all the features inside of XYZ Mesh. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day.